Hello, hello, welcome, dear University of Sydney alumni and friends from around the world. Welcome to our second Global Alumni webinar. My name is Rosalind Ogilvie and I'm the Vice Principal for Advancement at the University of Sydney. We have about 450 attendees from 33 countries that are listening in today. That is just fantastic, and it is so wonderful to see how far and wide the alumni community of the university reaches. Thank you so much for joining us and for showing us your ongoing support. I really hope you'll enjoy the conversation today. I'm actually on campus at Camperdown today. I'm in a new building that you might not have visited yet. It's called F23. For those of you who haven't seen it before, F23 is on City Road. It used to be an open air car park, and if you're standing in F23, right behind me there is City Road and then the Wentworth building. Yes, the Wentworth building is still here. Over to my right, we have the Cars Law building for those who did science. Law building is a bit further on, and I've got Marsden just in front of me. So I'm well and truly in the midst of Camperdown, and it's lovely to be back at campus. Before we begin the discussion, speaking of place, I would really like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia and recognise their continuing connection to our land, water and culture. An acknowledgement of country is something that Australians have started doing perhaps over the last decade or so to really acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were here first. I'm speaking from the University of Sydney, as you know, and I'm currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. In Australia, we just celebrated National Reconciliation Week, which is a really special time for Australians to talk about our relationships with our heritage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander type, and how we can go forward together. I think we're going to put a little link to a map of Australia. If you're interested to know how all the Aboriginal nations fit together, you can have a look at any time. Well, today I've read a great quote this week, which I think sums it up beautifully, from Vladimir Lenin of all people. He said, "There are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen." And now I think that's probably true of our experience over the last few months. COVID-19 has disrupted life as we know it. Lockdowns have forced us all to find new ways of working and living. We've seen how it's essential to be agile and rapidly adapt to change. But what has not changed was the need to feel connected and share our experiences acknowledged. And that's really why we're here today. So how can we innovate to remain relevant in times of rapid disruption? And how can we learn from this COVID-19 experience? Well, you'll hear from a panel of extraordinary alumni today with expertise in education, innovation, energy, technology, and events. You'll learn how their sectors have been affected by COVID-19 and how they've adapted and what they think about the post-pandemic future. We'll begin with a panel discussion, followed by an opportunity for you to ask some questions. Please feel free to submit them via the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. Well, it now gives me great pleasure to warmly welcome the University's Vice Chancellor and Principal, Dr. Michael Spence. Hello, Michael. We have Steven Bai, CEO and founder of Sencity, who is joining us today from Beijing. Hello, Steven.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi. We have Olivia Ji, co-founder and president of EventBank, who is also in Beijing right now. Hi, Olivia.
Hi. Thank you for the introduction.
Excellent. We have Ruchir Punjabi, co-founder of DE.Energy, who is actually in Dubai. Hello, Ruchir. And
hello, Rosalind.
We have Dr. Moonyati Yatid, Senior Analyst at the Institute of Strategic and International Studies, who's in Kuala Lumpur today. Hello, Moonyati.
Hello everyone.
Hi. Well, thank you all for being part of today's panel. So I'm going to start us off. I'd like to ask a little bit of you all in terms of how COVID-19 has impacted your lives. And I'm going to start with the Vice Chancellor. It would be great to hear from you about how your life in Sydney has been affected this year from COVID-19, and perhaps a little bit about how the university has adapted to the pandemic. Michael.
So my life has changed, and I'm spending obviously a lot more time at home, working from home with my wife and our 3 toddlers and our teenage daughter, and my mother-in-law lives with us for most of the week, and my father-in-law for some of the week. So we have quite a full house, but I am here for, in fact, my wife is just, I think, about to ask me about dinner or something.
No.
I'm doing a webinar for 125 people or something. So there you go. That's what life is like. Today I was doing a document signing with the Chinese University of Agriculture to mark a historic collaboration in agriculture between that 10th ranked university in agriculture in the world and the University of Sydney, building on some extraordinary collaborations with them that we already have, when my 3-year-old ran into the picture with a chip. So you can never quite tell what's going to happen when you're working from home. I have been working from home. I've been enjoying it. We've been spending time in the bush behind our house. I enjoy the flexibility. I work at all times of night and day, but that's not unusual. But it does mean that there's less of my time spent commuting from one meeting to another. And that's been actually rather productive. In terms of the university, we experienced the coronavirus crisis in China before we experienced it in Australia, because of course the travel ban was introduced in the beginning of February, and so fairly soon we realized that a large number of our students weren't going to be able to come to campus for first semester, and within 2 weeks we put 1,000 units of study online. And then when everything went online, that was, as it were, just the next stage in the process. We left campus open. We had campus open because it's not easy for everybody to study at home or to work at home, and we were able to do that. Of course, some laboratory work had to keep going, otherwise experiments would have failed in one way or another. So campus was still open, but essentially the university has been working from home since. I think the university showed itself to be incredibly agile. The feedback from the online learning has been very positive. And now we're in the tricky process, given that Australia is now relatively COVID-free. We're doing about 8,000 or 9,000 tests a day. And a really bad day, there might be 10 or 15 cases. Given that Australia is relatively COVID-free, the issue is how we move back to campus for second semester. And that's much more socially tricky, because whereas when you move into isolation, you're working with people's anxieties and with, as it were, the anxieties of the most concerned. When you're bringing people back into on-campus experience of one way or another, you're having to manage people's very different levels of risk tolerance and people's understandings of what's safe and what's not safe, and to reassure them in different ways. You also have to think about things like social distancing in classrooms, and what arrangements can be made to ensure that people on campus are safe. So we've learnt a lot. We've learnt that the institution can be incredibly agile. We've learnt that our students are simply remarkable and committed to their education. You know, we were blown away when, for example, many of our students from China made the effort to go to third countries so that they could come to Australia. We've learnt that just how committed our students are to their education. And we've been experimenting with online education that I think means we'll never go back to simply having the online thing as a bit of an optional extra that nobody quite knows what to do about, but we'll much more quickly move into the sort of blended learning that we've been talking about in theory at universities for about a decade.
Well, thank you, Michael. I think that's spot on, and I'd like to make a proposal tonight that any pets that we see on screen get 5 points, any small children 10 points, and let's make it a really serious business. So Moonyati, you're based in Malaysia. What has this year been like for you?
First of all, I would like to say thank you to you, Sid, for the kind invitation for me to share my experience, and thank you everyone for taking time off to listen in. Well, in Malaysia, we recorded our first COVID-19 case on 24th of January. However, it wasn't until March that the cases became more serious, and then we started a partial lockdown, what we call the Movement Control Order, or MCO, on the 18th of March. Since then, we started to face a sudden change and were forced to adapt to what a lot of people now call a new normal. For Malaysians who are able to work from home, such as myself, though we needed to make some adjustments in carrying out our work, We can be considered as the lucky ones because there were others who were not as lucky. Economic impact has been quite enormous on Malaysians due to the lockdown, especially to those who receive daily wages, small and medium enterprises, or the tourism sector. There were also many who faced pay cuts across various sectors. During MCO, the social activities were also not allowed. So no gyms, parks, and even and jogging around the neighborhood was not allowed. So we were basically told to stay at home unless we really needed to go out. Failure to do so, we would need to face a hefty fine, typically slapped with RM 1,000 ringgit or about $300 Australian dollars equivalent of fine or jail time. Religious activities such as in mosques were also not allowed. And as Malaysia is a Muslim majority country, Ramadan and Eid are significant events here. But this year, as they happened during MCO, celebrations were very different than previous years. So we could only perform prayers at home. And since interstate travel was not allowed, many couldn't go back to their hometown and were stuck to celebrate alone in the city. Thank God for video conferencing tools to keep people connected. But then, so besides video conferencing, the growing role of technology to assist our daily lives can also be observed. For instance, in e-commerce, when people start to buy food and home supplies, and also e-learning as schools and universities are closed. Also, as families were separated, even funerals were carried out online. I think during this pandemic, one of the most surprising things that I discovered was that COVID-19 is not only a health crisis, but also has very strong economic and social implications, especially when citizens were put under lockdown. For instance, there were rising mental health issues, discrimination towards vulnerable groups, fake news going rampant on social media, rising cases of domestic violence, and many more. Despite all those challenges, having said that, after about almost 3 months going through the MCO, Malaysia seems to be going on a positive path. Thus, we have eased the lockdown in stages. So just yesterday, we started what we call the recovery MCO, where almost all economic sectors have reopened. Social activities and interstate travels are now allowed. However, all these need to adhere to proper SOPs, social distancing, contact tracing, temperature checks, and etc., etc. All of which I believe not only a new norm for Malaysia, but also countries globally.
Thank you, Moonyati. I think that's a fascinating overview of what's been going on in Malaysia, and it really underlines the kind of the arc that's happened across the world in terms of the experiencing of the pandemic, with lockdown and how we react to lockdown coming almost in stages. Thank you. So Ruchir, your company empowers smaller businesses to invest in renewable energy products across Africa, Middle East, and India. How has the pandemic affected you and the lives of your clients?
Thanks, Rosalind. My renewable energy business primarily matches investors with energy projects, renewable energy projects across India and Africa. So first of all the travel restrictions meant that I have workers stuck in Africa or between cities in India, and supporting them has been a key priority. Then we've had project schedules go out of the window due to the supply chain pressures and lockdowns. But we've also opened up a lot of new opportunities. All our clients have kept their solar plants on because they get credit from their local grids. Effectively, they're supplying power to the local grids. Interestingly, investor interest in our business has been at an all-time high. The stock market is widely exuberant, and so sophisticated investors are talking to us to invest in renewable energy long-term. I think people are reflecting on whether their investments align with their values. So we've raised a few $1 million for our assets in the last 2 months. And given the kind of investor interest, we're also in the process of launching a fund in renewable energy. We were planning to do that a little later, but we fast-tracked that because of the number of people who are interested. So actually, this has sort of been difficult in certain areas, but it's also opened up a lot of new doors in other areas.
I think that's fascinating, the kind of behaviours you expect from a major disruption like problems with the stock market. The COVID-19 experience has thrown a lot of the assumptions we make about how the world reacts to change on its head. It's really fascinating. Thank you, Ruchir. Stephen, you've been travelling a lot between the USA, Australia and China. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
For sure. Firstly, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity. I'm really appreciative to have this chance to share with you guys, what's going on with our company and my personal journey through the COVID-19. Before the pandemic, flying around was pretty easy. But now with all the extra screenings, health checks, restrictions, and sudden flight cancellations, I would say it has impacted on my travel a lot. And it has led to multiple rescheduled meetings with our clients, with our collaborators and partners around the world. But on the flip side, this is also an opportunity for new technology, especially in the space of travel and public health. The pandemic will most definitely change the way we travel in the future from my perspective. But for better or for worse, I think we should all focus more on the opportunity to help the world become a safer place. One of our team members, actually two of our team members from New York got infected by the coronavirus, but they're all fully recovered right now. And we've been collaborating via Zoom, via Asana, via a bunch of other online collaborative tools such as Dropbox in the past couple of months. I went back to China during April, and China as a country has implemented very strict measuring controls across pretty much all aspects of our daily lives. It brings more hustle, but it also gives us the everyday, as the everyday citizen, it gives us a better peace of mind. Basically, everyone is cooperating very well. I mean, the Chinese people would want this to end as much as everyone else around the world. And I'm really excited to see what sort of opportunities will be incubated during this special period of time.
Thank you, Stephen. And I love that point about collective endeavour and how COVID-19 has required not just individuals, but countries to work together. And it's a fascinating and exciting and hopefully really rewarding kind of new world for us. So Olivia, across town in Beijing, you're running an event business. Can you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has affected your work and what you've done to adapt?
Okay, thank you for having me today. So through the whole coronavirus process, our CEO for our Russia company, he is the only one got infected, and and he recovered now. So we're very happy for him. So when the coronavirus happened in January, the first thing we do is I wrote a letter to all of my team worldwide, because worldwide we have 8 offices. So one sentence, one quote I gave to them is, "The good seaman is known in bad weather." Because the coronavirus is going to create lots of unknown challenge for our business, for each individual and the family. So I think as an entrepreneur, as a president of the company, even myself, I have fear, I have stress, but I have to be the one to give my team confidence. So till today, I'm very proud for all my team worldwide. One is all of them is healthy, their family healthy. Secondly, actually for the first 2Q, June still have half months, but for the first 2Q, our business still grow 50% compared to same time last year. So yes, so when I look back, what my team and myself have done right, I think number one is 2nd of February actually is the day Beijing office first start. We all work from home. So as a company, because we're a cloud-based software company for event marketing, so in the past 2 years, our company managed by 15 different cloud-based software. Like all our document is on Quip, and all our accounting system is supported by New Zealand SaaS company Xero, and all our overseas signing customer contract using Panda Sign. So when we sign the digital sign, and it will trigger Xero send invoice to customer, and after customer pay, and Xero will record, and will trigger our help desk to transfer from sales to customer success team. And then so the R&D team, basically all their code is on GitHub, and all their UI design is on my project. So all these paved, like during the coronavirus, our team, they very easy to collaborate from all different places online. So that is one thing is really, really helpful. So, and then in R&D, we immediately discussed, we think offline events is impossible. So we immediately did integration with Zoom. So now our integration with Zoom, because when we attending Zoom events, people cannot social. So with our integration product, so people can change name card as attendee, and also can leave message on the other side of the screen to discussing. So we bring the social element to the Zoom events. So it's very interesting. This brings new opportunity to us because Zoom as a company start to pay attention to EventBank. Previously, we just many events marketing cloud software company, but now Zoom is like global, like 60 billion market cap. They're looking for company can grow in their ecosystem. So it's definitely bring new opportunity to EventBank. And another thing we found out is lots of very traditional customers during this time start to adopt marketing automation tools, so contact us. And very interestingly, in the past, the overseas customers can do everything online, but the Chinese customer want to face-to-face. It's a culture thing. But during coronavirus, people dropped that expectation. So actually make our sales process more efficient. And another thing is very interesting is then we realized lots of young graduates wouldn't have the good job opportunity. So what we did is we launched our virtual intern program through LinkedIn. So actually we recruited 20 brilliant young graduates. I had a Zoom like a coffee time with them. It's very fascinating. Some of them in Turkey, some of them in Dubai, some of them in Virginia State, some of them it's just everywhere, Philippines. And we had a talk and they're working on different projects for EventBank now. So we definitely went through a very unknown period of time, but till June, like all our teams start to gain more confidence because we look back the past 3 to 4 months, we did well. And in Beijing, actually this Monday is the Beijing office reopen. So we're going to do a party tomorrow night. And last week, the first time I traveled to Shanghai, so I can do travel now. And everywhere they, as Steven said, there's lots of check. For example, one of my Shanghai staff, he got fever, then immediately he been put into testing coronavirus. But all these things, and then he's negative. So, but all this detail actually make we feeling quite safe, the environment. So that's also give us confidence the world will go back. And another thing I want to share with everyone is during March and April, I always think about, will the world go back? But now I can tell everybody the world will go back because when the virus passed, you know, like Beijing, the restaurant packed, the bar packed, and now this week, many offline events, which means human beings still want to meet each other. and there is a good life waiting for us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. You've given us all a great fillip. Thank you. Your comments about your business are fascinating and lead us perfectly into this subject of innovation. When the rule book gets thrown out, it's really a phenomenal opportunity for us to think about what we want to do differently. Now, for higher education, innovation plays a critical role in addressing wicked social problems through teaching and research. Our research team have rapidly pivoted through COVID-19 to consider how the research from our university can really help tackle the illness. Michael, as our Vice Chancellor, how do you think this period will affect our research and our research partnerships going forward?
So I think it's just shown that research partnerships are more important than ever. So for example, the gene for the COVID-19 virus was sequenced by a team. It was first announced by a researcher at the University of Sydney, by our Professor Eddie Holmes. But of course, he was working with a team from Wuhan, and that also had experts from other areas of the world. The vaccine work that's being led, of course, by an Australian, Jane Holton, is drawing on the best work from around the world. I think collaborative research is going to be more important than ever. One of the interesting things about the sort of Zoom revolution is that it's also making us explore much more with our overseas partners what collaborative teaching would look like online, because our students are now much more comfortable with learning online, and that some of the opportunities that we're exploring, for example, with a university in America and a university in China and Australia to be teaching seminar courses jointly. Yes, we dabbled with that sort of thing before, but it now seems normal to our staff and students in a different kind of way, and I think that will make a difference. So I think both in our teaching and research, it's emphasized the importance of collaboration.
And the relationship between collaboration and technology has really never been closer. And this whole discussion so far, the idea of technology actually making things possible that we never thought could be, seems to be a common thread. Thank you, Michael. Moonyati, your area of expertise is just that, technology and innovation. Can you tell us about perhaps some great examples of how technology has been used during the pandemic?
I think to me, there are two functions of technology amid COVID-19. First is to assist our daily lives, especially during the lockdown, and secondly, to help fight COVID-19. I have briefly talked about the former previously, and now may I talk more about the latter. Like other countries, Malaysia has leveraged on technology to assist our fight against the virus. So, for instance, surveillance technology is being adopted to enforce the MCO, with drones being deployed to assist the law enforcement frontliners to monitor public compliance. So these drones equipped with heat sensing technology and speakers, they are used during both day and night to monitor public movement in town centers and red zone areas, as well as to convey information to citizens. Malaysia has also come up with a few apps for the public to download. So the first one is the citizen can carry out a health self-assessment on themselves and their families through this app called MySejahtera. And the app also provides them information on how to get treatment if they are infected with COVID-19. We also have a contact tracing app. So using Bluetooth technology, the app enables identification of people who have been in close proximity to an infected person. Another app that Malaysia has developed is to monitor interstate travel. So what happened was when citizens need to travel interstate, they will need to apply for permission via the app. So meanwhile, in Sarawak, a state in Malaysia, so has rolled out a digital surveillance system that requires those being monitored to wear a QR coded wristband. Even though the government is playing a big role to drive the fight against COVID-19, academics, NGOs, private sector have played their part too. Various innovative solutions by Malaysians to protect frontliners and public safety have been developed. So for instance, we have the face shields using 3D printing. We have the automated disinfection chamber. We also have the robots on wheels, or what we call a Medibot, to check on coronavirus patients, which can reduce health workers' risk of infection. Despite all these developments, it is also important to remember that technology is a double-edged sword. So it can also be used for malicious intents. So for instance, in Malaysia, there has been rising cybersecurity cases amid COVID-19, involving, for instance, fake news or misinformation that is being circulated on social media. We also have rising cases of online scams. So besides all this, with the growing use of surveillance technology, especially with contact tracing apps, there have also been rising concerns on security and privacy.
That's fascinating, Moonyati. Thank you. And I think that the last few months is going to really press us as a global community to understand a little bit what we want technology to be able to do and what we don't want it to do, as much as one from the other. Steven, your company has won the prestigious Gold Edison Award for Product Innovation this year. So congratulations to you. Another reason why we're proud you're a University of Sydney alumnus. Your practice centres on design-led innovation and playable technology in shaping our lives and experiences in future cities. Now, after so many of us have been restricted to our homes, how do you think this period will impact on interactive design?
Thanks. At Sencity, we've always been about building smart interactive infrastructures for better urban experiences in public spaces to encourage more public happiness. The pandemic and lockdown has inspired myself, my team members, and I think a lot of other, many of us to revalue the importance of physical interactions and engagements, not just with the world, but with each other. Being able to share experiences and being with others, even socially distanced and masked, gives us joy. This sense of play in our cities and public spaces provides us lasting memories and the thrill of exploration, discovery, and social collaboration that we hunger for in quarantine. We have in the past built our cities to impress and display our achievements, most of the time. In the post-pandemic world, I think we may pivot that to community building, quality of life, and sustainability. Our team in particular, we're still a very early stage company with only 32 full-time employees across Beijing, Shanghai, Sydney, and New York, kind of spread out. And we see our mission helping to build that vision, designing and creating next generation interactive infrastructures and public spaces with devices, technologies for events and public spaces and cities that bring about engagement and encourage with good incentives for good civic behaviors to inject more joy and kindness in the mundane built environment.
Steven, I love that. And the fundamental power of the human connection, I think, is a theme that keeps coming back through the COVID-19 experience. And the way in which we value it has, I think, shifted significantly. And I think your work is really bringing that to bear for the people who benefit from your company's work. Thank you. So, Olivia, you're obviously a leader of an events-based company. How have you adapted your business model to adjust to the new normal, which I think is a new phrase that's now entered our lexicon everywhere? How successful has that been?
Because my EventBank is my second company, so because I'm always in the internet startup space. So in 2003, when SARS happened in China, actually migrated China to see internet space, consumer behavior to online. I remember my mom first time buying things online is during SARS 2003, because she has to. So actually the Amazon China, they raised during the SARS in 2003. So many Chinese consumers not used to buy things, purchase things online. Then they started using Taobao and also Jingdong. They all became the top internet company. So then when we observing the internet technology innovation space this time basically two type of company is really like the rising star. One type of company is also e-commerce, but we can see it's very interesting. The Chinese customers' life quality requirement higher. This time the e-commerce company became a rising star. It's a company you buy the fresh vegetable and seafood. So you order and arrive to your home in 2 hours. So this time there's this 3 app every day crazy being ordered by people about the fresh vegetable. People not only want to purchase things online, they want to purchase things fresh, get into their house in 2 hours so they can cook fresh. So these 2 apps, one is called the Ding Dong Mai Cao, one is called 每日生鲜, called Daily Fresh, became very high valuation company during the whole March, April. Even there's coronavirus, the VC chasing the company. Second type of company is all the 2B internet company. It's like all the SaaS company. It's very interesting. Lots of bots approach us, want to buy our software because they want to heavily using not only the marketing automation tool, also want to using the CRM. They say, because my team is at home, I don't know what they're doing. I want to see the salespeople contact the 20 customer, made a phone call, all the record in the CRM system. So there's lots of 2B internet company this time really have a rewarded experience during the past 4 months. They sold lots of software because for the long distance working from home trend. So all companies need to adopt all this software too. So it's interesting to see every time when something happened that disrupt our lifestyle, and there is some internet product that are going to become the rising star. Same as Zoom, 20 times user growth in the first Q. That's amazing. And a similar copycat in China, there's a couple company, because Zoom set up the bar too high, because Zoom user like 20 times more in Q1. So make all these video online conference company have to have 6 times growth in Q1. Otherwise they wouldn't get investment. So it's very fun to watch the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. And I think you're spot on. For every strange, unexpected thing that's happened this year, there's been a sort of equal and opposite reaction of a new opportunity that's come to bear. And I think there are some great examples. Thank you. So Ruchir, during the shutdown, there were some incredible images of cities that had no pollution. We could look through the Venice canals and see the fish swimming. It was incredible. It reminds many of us that the environmental issues that are threatening the planet are still here, even though we might all be in lockdown. And as the co-founder of Distributed Energy, which is a business that enables renewable energy products in emerging markets, what do you see as a further investment opportunity, or how do you see the environmental question really playing out in the future?
I think this point has been made a few times, but effectively this is an opportunity to take stock of where we stand, especially with climate change. I don't know if you've seen the meme circulating which talks about COVID and then recession and then the big wave that's still not hit us, which is, or people haven't appreciated, which is climate change. The sad thing is we are also getting back to pollution levels as economies start opening up. We've seen some of the data come out of China, India, Europe. So I think this is an interesting time to make sure that we really reflect on what we want our future to be. Britain, the headline in the last few days, has just gone 8 weeks without turning on their coal plants. Last time oil prices were this low, solar prices were 10 times higher than they are now. So we are at the point in time where governments and people can actually make choices of picking renewable alternatives as opposed to conventional sources of energy. I want to be clear, renewable can't solve all of the energy problems today, but it can certainly be more than 50% of the energy mix for any country. And so as humanity, it is time to evolve. Where countries are choosing where to deploy stimulus packages, they can actually choose to focus on renewable infrastructure and upgrading grids. Of course, we can also fast track EV infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure. Lastly, I think agriculture and farmland reforms are quite crucial, I think, for the long-term carbon reduction. And I think especially when we think about unemployment and how that is one of the feature themes of the pandemic, employing the same people in new opportunities that address the world's problem is going to be key on how we make a comeback. So I think all around, we either turn the catastrophe into a real opportunity, or we return back to where we were pre-COVID, and that would be really sad.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, that we're at a moment of almost collective choice where we have an opportunity and we either seize it or we don't. And I think that that is quite a profound thing, particularly for the future of our planet. Well, thank you, everyone. We are now about to start the Q&A part of the session. Please, everyone, if you have questions for our group, please put them in the chat button, the chat section at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to start with a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time. And the first one is to the Vice Chancellor. So, Michael, this has been submitted by Mohammed, who's currently in Malaysia. What are the essential skills that students and graduates really need to acquire in order to survive in a post-pandemic COVID-19 environment?
So I think the essential skills are really the skills around adaptability. And, you know, a couple of years ago, we completely redid our undergraduate education offerings, moving from 125 undergraduate degrees to variations on 25. And when we were redoing the undergraduate degrees, we really asked ourselves the question, what are the skills that people are going to need to be, well, in that context, it was, in that case, it was in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. What are the skills that they're going to need to be the people who tell the machines what to do, not the people whose jobs are replaced by the machines? But in a sense, they're the same skills. What are people going to need to be in order to be adaptable to the sorts of emerging opportunities that we've heard about this evening? And we figure there are 4 things that you really need to look for in a higher education. The first is, oddly, a deep immersion in a discipline. All the experience suggests that you need to know something about something in order to know anything about anything, and that knowing a discipline really well is the best way of teaching written and oral communication skills. The second is you need a multidisciplinary perspective, an ability to work with people from other disciplines, and that kind of intellectual flexibility. So we made it possible to take a second major from anywhere in the university, but also required students to take some breadth subjects. The third thing is you really need an international perspective. You need that core intellectual skill of being able to assume the cultural frames of the other and see the world, or at least understand how they might see the world from that perspective. And so we made it possible to take a second, third, or fourth language as a part of your degree, whatever you're doing. We significantly increased our numbers of students spending time overseas, though that's obviously now a challenge, so that we were, up until the beginning of COVID, sending more people overseas than anybody else. And also thought about how you build cultural competence into our core teaching. And then you need a synthetic skill. You need an ability to bring all of that together to solve problems in a practical kind of way. And so we've now require all undergraduates to do a project where they work with a company or civil society organization in Australia, China, India, the United States, the United Kingdom, Italy, or France, or Germany, where the company presents a real strategic problem that they're actually working on. Can't be something made up for the exercise. And the students in multidisciplinary teams with multidisciplinary teams of academics have to find a solution to it. And I think it's those skills. It's the T-shaped education, as they call it, that has both depth and breadth. It's the international perspective, and it's the problem-solving orientation that are the things you're really going to need to be an adaptable and employable or entrepreneurable graduate for the future. And you know, we're very proud of the fact we're routinely ranked 4th in the world for employability of our graduates and all the rest of it. But they're the skills that we think you'll need.
Thank you, Michael. And I think that that absolutely underlines, that education strategy underlines so much of what we're saying here today, which is technology is here and it's ready to be used. We have to work out how we have to make decisions about how we want to use it, and we have to have people who can think through those big implications. So I'm very glad Sydney Uni is continuing to produce them. So Moonyati, I have a bit of an existential one for you. So one of our alumni has asked the question, does it make sense to plan long term anymore? What are your thoughts on that one?
I think this is an interesting question. And my response to that is, of course. Of course, it still makes sense to plan long term. But I think what the pandemic is reminding us is to review our long-term plans periodically. Along the way, we need to make relevant changes and pivot if we need to. There is an important lesson in innovation. There's a saying that says, "Don't fall in love with your first idea." So we need to always review and try to improve them. In terms of innovation and pivoting, we need to put into account internal and external factors that could potentially force us to change our long-term plans. So for instance, if you're in business, we need to always review new technologies, competitors, target markets, etc., and then change our products or services accordingly. So if we look at the job market, due to this pandemic, the job market will be highly competitive. So let's look at Malaysia. So job losses in the country has increased by 42% year on year for this first quarter. In addition, it has been forecasted that the unemployment rate will hit 4% in 2020, compared to 3.2% during the 1997 Asian financial crisis and 3.7% during the Great Recession in 2018. So Malaysian job losses could hit over 2 million, according to a new survey. So I'm sure this is, other parts of the world would also face similar impacts. So what can we learn from this? How do we respond to this? Like my answer would be first to plan long term, and then review your long-term plan. And if you're one of those directly affected, you need to upskill and reskill accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Moonyati. I think that's extremely good advice. And in moments of uncertainty, the good advice is more valuable than ever. Thank you. So Steven, here's one for you. Do you have any suggestions for students who are graduating in 2020 who will need to find a job in the current situation? And that's from Claire.
Graduating in 2020, well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of new opportunities will be incubated during this special period of time. And we've had 2 interns from the School of IT at the University of Sydney during this special period of time. A lot of the students stuck in China, we reached out to them and we took them into the company to experience, how it is like, working in a real environment with, real clients and real projects. Well, going back to Claire's question, I think from a personal perspective, I think, things will eventually resume to normal. And right now, it's the best time to have a peace of mind to search your heart and really think about what you feel passionate about and what you're trying to chase and what you're trying to invest your youth into after your graduation. And I've done a lot of that myself during this special period of time to think about what is the new path our companies is pivoting into, and how we're gonna accelerate the growth of our team. And what 5 years ago, I have this mentality, which is I've got nothing to lose. I can always try something new. But right now, I'm getting really, really old in this technology industry, and I'm constantly feeling that I'm, being outdated and being left behind by the industry, by the rapid growth and the disruptions of the industry. So I would suggest, Claire, and I would suggest people who are graduating from 2020 to search their hearts and think about to find that northern star of how you're willing to invest the golden period of time of your life into, and take a break from worrying too much about the current problems and the daily commodities we have to face every single day. And that would be my 2 cents.
The theme of reflection is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because it keeps coming back that we have the opportunity now, as it were, to think both about what this period has taught us about our own values and choices, and also about as Ruchir says, about the values and choices we're making for the planet. Because of course, last time that didn't happen. So after the Spanish flu, the demographic effects of this were much worse, that killed more people and killed more people across all age groups, and not only predominantly the elderly and all the rest of it. By 1920, 21, life had gone back completely to normal, and people didn't even talk about the Spanish flu, so that it's almost impossible to find references to it in literature and art. So I think that theme that's been running through the conversation about reflection and not missing the opportunity for reflection, I think is a really important one.
I completely agree. I think we're about to see a huge avalanche of choices that are coming to us as individuals, as communities, and as nations, and it's coming our way, and it's a really important moment to think about it.
Yeah, because we keep talking about the new normal, but assuming that the disease meets some kind of normal epidemiological curve and life goes back, things could go back to the old normal very, very quickly indeed.
That's right. All we need is for us to do nothing, and I think it might. So I have one more question. We have time for one more question for our Q&A, and this one's for you, Olivia. Olivia, what do you think the future will look like for event businesses? You mentioned that you're doing both physical events and virtual events, but the balance between the two is now shifting. How do you think that will play out?
I think 10, 20 years ago, people already say event is going to die, but that never happened because human beings like to face-to-face and like to shake the hands, enjoy the kind of communication. And even now, right now, like in China, the events already came back, offline events. So this is just a human being. We like to get together, we like social. But I do see there's a percentage change, proportion will definitely go online because online is definitely more scalable, more efficient. Like recently when we launched our new features in our app about the membership community management, and we did a global launch, like 800 people get on Zoom, listen. Before coronavirus, probably we'll think about we do one in Singapore for APAC, do one in States for US, and do one in Africa for our like South Africa office. But in the future, probably we'll do global open demo just for different time zone because that's good because it's much more scalable and efficient. And from here, then I want to mention a little bit, actually, lots of work go online. It's not happened during coronavirus. Actually, it's a trend, happened long before. It's just when our young students, some of them may be interested with this type of behavior or technology, some of them not. But back to your question, it's very interesting about long-term planning. So actually, if we see certain thing as a trend, we should learn and catch it early. If you do the advanced prepare about your skill. And on that, for young graduates, actually during this special situation, they can much easier to find a job or also to adapt to this new job environment that also environment need to how to get to work together. So that's why definitely there's a percentage. So that's why we do virtual event. We also develop a new product, virtual networking. And I see virtual networking about professional working, and all my young team members, they say, oh, this is great for online dating. Okay, fine. So it's a percentage change. But for every country, I believe in the next few months will come back because I experienced it. Because in January, Beijing got so nervous. So basically, I pushed my husband, take my kids, fly to US. And then the moment they landed in the US, they relaxed. So I called him, I said, wear a mask. You know, it's going to be a big thing in US. he not listen to me. This is human being. You know, like if not happened right around you, they not get it. So then January, our Beijing office very nervous, China office very nervous. And then February, it start to get to our Singapore, Hong Kong office. Then March, get to our US office. So nobody to listen to another person until their environment really impacted. So that's what I learned, the human being, they have to experience themselves and they will believe in it. So now it's same, like then Beijing office back to normal. Then I think the next one will be Singapore, Hong Kong. And the next one will be US, Australia. So it's like, there's a month gap there.
And that's Ruchir's problem, isn't it? Everybody in Australia believed in climate change when the whole world was burning. Now it's not that the country has forgotten about climate change, but it doesn't feel quite so real in people's conversation as it did at that time. It's a profound observation, Olivia.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. Thank you, Olivia. And I think you've touched on a very esoteric question, is what is the nature of experience? What is reality? I think we're entering into the matrix a little bit here. But thank you so much to our panel members for the wonderful insights today. Before we finish off today, I would like to ask the Vice Chancellor just to share with us, perhaps you were talking earlier about how this is a moment of reflection and thinking about what we want in the future. If you could share perhaps a little bit with us about what you're reflecting on, both for the university, but also for the wider world, and what you think really is what the things we need to think about right now.
Well, I think for us as a university, it's really back to the future. You know, when an institution is under challenge, you think about the things that are really important, and quality education, international research collaboration, but also creating a community on campus where people are able to have the sort of rich student life that you can have in that crucial period of your formation. These things are just incredibly important. And so as we've had to think, you know, facing various financial challenges about the things that we might need to give up, the things that are important to us, quality education, quality research, and a quality student experience, they've become, you know, more important than ever, really. I think the other thing is the international role of the university. You know, we are a campus on which people from 140 countries meet. International students make up 44% of our student body, but also 33% of our domestic students, or our Australian students, speak a language other than English at home. And I don't think that there has ever been a greater need for international understanding than there is at the moment. And I think the role of the university is crucial in that as well.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. I think you put your finger on it, which is to say this year has been one of incredible change. It's one for the history books, and it's one of the most unusual opportunities we have to change the future that I think we'll ever see in our lifetime. So
in the movie Back to the Future, there is the famous line that says, "Just Marty, don't go to 2020." So maybe it's coming through.
And yet we also have our hoverboard, so it really is all coming true.
Exactly.
So it only remains for me today to really say thank you to all of our panelists, wonderful alumni of whom we are enormously proud, and for your really thoughtful insights and perspectives on what is a rather incredible period of time. Things are changing so quickly at the moment all over the world. I think that's something we can take away from today. But it's also really a useful point at which to reflect, because we are going to be faced with a myriad of and taking us some time together to actually think about some of that, I think, has been incredibly useful. So I just close by saying a huge thanks to you all. We'll be hosting another webinar shortly featuring alumni in the States and America, and we're looking forward to seeing you all there then. Before you leave the webinar today, we'll be putting a survey which will pop up at the conclusion of the session. We'd love to know a little bit more about what you thought. This is all new territory for us as well. We're disrupting ourselves. So your feedback on that would be really appreciated. Look, thank you so much for joining us today. Please stay safe and well. Please keep connecting with us. We love to stay connected with you. We'll see you here, same time, same place next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney Uni. Thank you, Michael, Rose. Thank you.